Hello, I'm Canary 3D, and this is just a quick overview of how to use the product Canary's cameras. So I've got a scene with a Genesis 8 female. I've got a folder full of cameras. Please disregard my folder structure since this is my dev structure that I'm loading out of just for convenience. You can use it out of smart content or out of your content library. Um, it won't have these extra things like dev and new folder and so forth. So um, I'm going to go ahead and load all four sets at once. I'm not sure if this works from Smart Content, but it should work from Content Library to select them all at once and choose Merge into Scene. Um, you can also just double click each one in turn like any normal load process. So now they're all loaded. You can see they're all loaded, which is why I have these tiny representations of the cameras. I've shrunk all of the camera icons in the scene basically down to 10%, so they're not obtrusive, but you can see that they're there. If you select one of them, it'll pop open your hierarchy down to the point of that camera. So that's a convenient way to see the hierarchy if you want to. You can see there's three cameras here that are parented to this invisible node that is the parent. It's called parent human G8FL foot. That itself is parented to the left foot of the figure. So it will follow the left foot of the figure. And so if we move the shin, you can see the cameras also are moving with that figure. Now to look at it from the camera perspective, if I put this back to 0, you go to the camera drop down. If this drop down is not appearing in my screen capture, I apologize. Some of my screen capture software doesn't capture drop downs, which is suboptimal. But I'm choosing the left foot top camera right now. And so this is the left foot top camera view. And so here, if I have that shin selected, if I go to bend the shin again, you'll see the scene changes, but the view from the camera never changes. So it doesn't matter what you do to the figure, the view is not going to change. Obviously, if you pose parts of the foot, it's going to see that, but it's not going to modify its position relative to the foot. If I bend the foot, you can see the rest of the body moving relative to the foot, but the camera is locked to that foot essentially. So now if we go back to our perspective view, we can see that this foot is now in a pose, but from the camera's perspective it's always the same. And if you go to the left foot back, you'll see from the heel view, and left foot outer, you see it from the side. So these foot cameras can help you to get a figure standing on an object or on a floor without intersecting. It can help you if you're fitting shoes to the figure and you want to make sure you don't have any poke through. That's kind of the idea behind the foot cameras. So going through the different cameras, there's the body cameras, body front. Let's see, this is the body back. Again, I apologize if you're not seeing the drop down, but you can see the resulting camera name. Body left, body 3/4 right. The face cameras give you the front, the 3/4 view in each direction, and a full profile in each direction. Now, once you're in one of these views, you can move this camera however you want. If you don't like it to be such a strong profile, for example, you can change it if as long as you don't save over the original one. That's going to just save with whatever your scene is doing. There's no lock on the cameras; they're just in these positions. And then the hand, you have a top view of the hand, and again, if we, I'm just going to pose that forearm. If I can select the forearm here, let me bend it. It's going to follow with whatever you do. Now see here I've intersected the body so you can't see the hand anymore because the head's in the way. That's going to happen with, with some of the poses, but you just switch to an alternate view. Usually the opposite view of the hand will then be okay. So if not, you've intersected too far for your pose if you're actually trying to see the hand. So those are the hand views, and then I'm going to go back to the perspective view here. And I'm going to go ahead and apply a pose to this figure below here. So there we go. So here, if you switch again to the face front camera, it's just going to stay with the face based on the parenting. And the body front, it's got this tilt to it because it's parented to the hip, so it's going to take the same tilt as the hip. And same thing here and here. So in a lot of cases, these are going to be not the ideal way to render your image. They're going to be how you're going to pose your figure the way that you want it. Here we go. So here's the full body parent, body front, body back, 3/4 left, 3/4 right. Now with this, if I select the figure and I translate them so that I can't see them anymore in my scene, right? You know, you put them on a tall building or something. If I switch from my perspective view to my body front view, again, my figure is going to be right in the middle of my view again. So I'm going to show you how to use the scene cameras and then how to use cameras with unsupported figures. How to basically how to adapt the cameras to whatever figure you feel like using them with. So to start with, I'm going to show you the scene cams. I've got two small figures in the scene here. I've got Malin Lane's hatchling dragon, and I've got DZ Fire's light bob, which is the cutest light bulb guy. So these are both small figures, so I'm going to choose these close-in cameras. This is an overhead view of the Daz Dragon 3 to kind of give you an idea of how far away each of these is. This is Lori's Fantasy Castle, showing how far away we are from the Fantasy Castle for the distance cameras. So I'm going to choose distance 300, and I'm just going to load those up. And you see I've got two sets here, high and low. And then I'm also going to choose the low top cameras. So this has a top 300 and top 1K. So this is based on what the translation values are for these cameras. So it's Y translated to 1K or to 300. So based on that, you can pretty much figure out what the rest of these are doing, right? So I'll open up this set. This is the high set. North, northeast, east, southeast, south, southwest, west, and northwest. Now, if I go to my top 1K camera, you can see these cameras around the edge here pointing in at the figure. So that is what those compass designations mean. If I select this camera, that's the low north camera. Going here, this is the high north camera. I'll switch to the south camera so we don't have to be looking at his backside, right? So this is a high angle south camera. It's coming from the south to the center of the scene. This is the low angle south camera coming from the south to the center of the scene. Just like the other cameras, these are not locked. You can move them. You can do what you like with them. So these are all just starting points of the cameras. You can see here what the translation values are. I've basically placed them translated on the Z axis and the Y axis. Sorry, the Z and the X for these compass cameras. The high cameras have a tilt to them. They all have somewhat of a tilt to them because you don't really want them at ground level. So the low cameras are a lower angle, but they are not ground level cameras. You really don't need to be looking at, you know, the bottom of the steps of your scenery. So each of them has what I think is a useful angle. You can change these to your heart's content, and if you want to resave them, these are just scene subsets. So make yourself a sub folder called extras, or you know, my stuff, or whatever you want to call it, and just save a scene subset with the camera set in it. If you select the parent of the camera and you start to move it around, it'll move all of the cameras together. So like here, I'm moving this up so he's mostly out of the scene. If I switch to the north camera in the same set, where'd my north? Here, yeah, here we go. It's gonna see it from the same angle. It's just gonna switch to you know, to another position. So I'm going back to this position, and you can basically step around the scene by going to these different views. It's going in a square, not a circle. So for the really close in cameras, it will seem to move outward more when you go to the southeast, southwest rather than the cardinal directions of north, south, east, west. Um, Trying to mimic a circle would mean changing the distances. I find it simpler to use if it's translated to exactly 300 east and 300 south for that southeast, for example. If you prefer to be able to move around in a circle, you can start experimenting and just change some of these distances for yourself. So I'm going back to the perspective view. That basically shows you the scene cameras. So going back to perspective view now, and I'm going to go ahead and bring in the figure cameras. Now I'm going to delete out my scene cameras here. I'm just keeping the top cameras in case I need them for finding the scene cameras. Just makes it a little easier. Now the hatchling dragon has pretty standard DAZ style naming for his body parts. So I'm going to take a crack at just using the dragon camera and see what happens. My expectation is that the scale of this figure is going to make it so that it doesn't work right out of the box, but we're going to make it work with just a couple steps, I think. So here we go. No, it does work. Okay, it doesn't. It caught up with the scale, it looks like. Let's see what happens if we go with the dragon face front. Not quite right. Dragon face. Yeah, so that's not quite doing what we want. So here we want to zero the figure pose to start with. And with this, if we look at it in the perspective camera again, you can see this is not posed the way that the dragon is posed. This is posed like a human. It's not posed like an animal. So even though it's a dragon, the dragon set is the wrong one to use with this figure. It's better to use a human set with this figure. So I'm going to apply a human camera set to this dragon. I'm just choosing Genesis 1 body because it's here. It's at the top of my folder, and it doesn't really matter which of the humans you choose, as once you're doing it, you're adapting. Basically, you just want to choose something that seems to be about the right size if you can. So here, this has come in because the hatchling dragon has a hip. It appears that this is parented to the hip. Let me just check that. Yep. Okay. And so from there, I'm going to switch cameras and see if it ends up looking the way that we want it to. I still have some loose dragon hand cameras in here that I need to delete out. These don't belong in here because he's not shaped like a dragon. So this is pretty good. He's a little low in the frame. So you might want him to be a little higher in the frame. You don't adjust the individual cameras to make him higher in the frame. You want to adjust the parent of the camera. So over here is the parent, and we just want to Y translate till he's in the middle of the frame. That will then make all of the cameras put him in the middle of the frame. So that's all you need to do for that body camera. Now let's see how he reacts when we load a face camera. If my double clicking will load a face camera for us. Merge it into the scene. Okay. Now if his head is named head, then the face cameras should be showing up here. Yes, they are. So let's see what kind of result we get. Okay, he's not in the frame at all. So again, we don't want to adjust the camera. Your temptation is going to be to start scooching. Don't do that. You want to change your translation. Now here, that's very close in. So that's not quite how we want it to look. And here, when it comes to adjusting left and right, that is when you're going to adjust on the specific camera. So here on this face front, you're just going to use your camera controls to just zoom out till he's where you want him to be. And then you're just going to go through the other cameras and use the camera controls to do the same thing. Zoom out, move over, put him in the middle. And as you do that through each of the cameras, it should work fine to do that. Now, so far we're doing fine with him because he's basically human shaped. Chances are his hands are named hand. I'm going to go ahead and load up a hand camera. As you can see, they're in completely the wrong place, so you are going to need to translate and probably translate the whole thing inward as well in order to get it so that your, um, let's see, left hand, so that the hand is roughly in the position that you want it to be in. So we've got our left hand roughly in the position. Now, having done that, and I'm just going to take the right hand camera out because I'm not going to do that right now, but you get the idea. But so having done that, if we return to this body front view, we select him and then we go to apply a pose to him. Then we can see if what we've done really works. So here's a crouching pose. You can see the camera is now under him because it's parented to that hip. If you go to body back, it's behind him, and your 3/4 views. And then the face front is staying with him. And which of the face, there you go, that's 3/4 left. And then that hand top is also staying where it was before. So if you do this, you can just save a separate group. To save it, you just select him and you say save as wearable preset. Now I'm not sure my camera capture is going to show this, but it saves as a wearable preset. I'm just going to make a test file here, and all you have to do is let it select everything it wants to, or you can go ahead and deselect some of these if you don't want to save it all together. But it'll save the whole set, and when you accept that, it'll save it into your folder. Now it's still in your scene. These are all named G1 human. You can go in and you can rename these before you save it by just altering their names in the scene if you want to do that. Okay, so finally, I want to show you how to use the cameras with a figure that does not have the same naming convention as a human figure, and is totally an unsupported figure. So this is DZ Fire's Light Bob figure. You can see that his head is named Bulb and it's his body is named Socket. So when we load up we can select him and we can load a human face set. And they are not going to parent to the head because they're looking for something called head to parent to. But that is not that difficult to correct. Now, if we look at the positions of the cameras, obviously that's not working. We know it's too high in the scene, so I find the easiest way to adjust that is to go to the front camera and then just start translating downward until I see him. Hooray, there he is. Now, this is based on his scale. This is showing all of him. If you want it to just show his head, you would dolly in using your camera controls after you X-translate into position, and then you would do the same thing for each of these cameras until they're in the position. I know it's kind of silly to need a close-up of a light bulb, but we're going to go for that. So here's the right camera and the left camera. So now we have adjusted all of them. That's all it takes to adjust them. Now it's in the right position, but it still isn't parented. So you want to right click on this guy. If my pop-ups don't show, I apologize. You're going to choose change the parent. It'll say change CCAM parent, blah, blah, blah. You want to choose parent in place. You don't want it to move it. And then you choose that bulb, which is the head, and you say accept. Now it is parented to the bulb, and so now if we select the bulb and we bend it, or rotate it as it is because it's not really human, you can basically apply poses now. Going back to that perspective view, you can see they're now all pointing at him from a much closer angle. And if you pose him, which I'll do going over here to figures, mechanical. So if you pose him, So now that the cameras are in place, if you pose him, they are going to move with him because you've parented them. And you're going to continue to have your front view, your three-quarter view are going to stay with the character. They're going to stay locked on just as if it was a human character. And if you do a lot of light bulb rendering, you would rename this to CCAM Parent Light Bob Face and save it. If you want it to appear correctly in your scene where it is named for the figure it's attached to, you'd want to rename all of these. If that doesn't matter to you, you really don't have to do that though. And then you just save it as a wearable preset by selecting the figure and choosing File, Save As Wearable Preset. So that's how to adapt the Canary cameras to any figure that you want to use them with. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.